Hello and welcome to your full moon video for the full moon in Pisces and in the nakshatra of Shatabhisha. And this full moon will take place at roughly 7:35 p.m. London time on the 29th of August. If you want to know where that is in your particular time zone, you can go to timeanddate.com and just look at the difference between the time in London and your particular time. You know, sometimes the universe puts us through a lot of very intense changes in order to solidify our path. And we go through a lot of very deep challenges. Quite often we think we know which way to turn in a specific moment, and then we find out that we had it all wrong. And we can drive ourselves crazy accusing an unfair universe of guiding us in the wrong direction. But really, when it boils down to it, there's not really a right direction and a wrong direction. It's all part of a learning curve, albeit sometimes a very steep learning curve. And it's quite likely that you've recently been through a very deep challenge. But these deep challenges, they quite often provide us with further strength. Upon reflection, restoration, and rejuvenation after we have been through those particular trials. But sometimes we go through those trials and it seems like we're kind of being thrust into action immediately, and we haven't really had time to adjust to what has recently happened to us. Now, with Shatabhisha, there is quite often a very intense healing crisis that an individual goes through. What tends to happen is things will appear to be one way in one particular moment, and it's almost like we're being led astray towards a specific set of circumstances. But when we go through those circumstances, we become more aware, we become stronger, and we become wiser. Shatabhisha nakshatra is associated with Varuna. Varuna is the Vedic equivalent of Neptune. And Varuna basically is the creator of cosmic law. But in order for us to discover those laws, he wants us to learn them for ourselves, right? So quite often he puts us in a position where things will appear one way, somewhat obscure or obfuscated, and then we approach that particular situation and something deeper is revealed. It's said of Varuna that he covers things up in the night that are later to be revealed. And such is the energy of Shatabhisha nakshatra. And on the day that we're having this particular full moon, we've also got a very powerful alignment going on between Mars in Ashadha nakshatra and Pluto over here in Purva Ashadha nakshatra. Let's talk about this. This is called a quincunx. And a quincunx is an aspect of 150 degrees between two particular planets, or sometimes more than two particular planets, right? And what it does is it tends to create tension. It's as if those planets are not seeing eye to eye. And that makes sense in terms of this aspect, because a quincunx is really just off of an opposition when two planets are directly opposite each other. It's 30 degrees off of that particular aspect. So the two planets aren't seeing eye to eye. And Mars and Ashadha, let's understand Ashadha nakshatra. Ashadha is connected with the Nagas, or the serpent deities. And everything that's related to serpents is connected to Ashadha. And for this particular alignment, we want to touch on the concept that snakes tend to burrow deeply into holes. They delve deeply into things. Also, certain snakes have the tendency to hypnotize their prey. And with Ashadha nakshatra, it's quite often that we can be hypnotized by something. We can be drawn into something very deeply, sometimes to the extent that we're not able to see clearly. We're going to take a journey over to Pluto first, and then I'm going to bring all this together. Purva Ashadha. Purva Ashadha, at its root, I can probably sum the energy of Purva Ashadha up by saying that it's about being authentic with yourself. And if there's something that you're hiding from yourself, Purva Ashadha Nakshatra, and especially Pluto in Purva Ashadha, is going to reveal it. If you're not being real or authentic with others, or if you're not being real or authentic with yourself, or if you don't know yourself well, Purva Ashadha is going to peel away at the layers of the ego that are keeping you from living in this particular space. And with this particular alignment, it's about moving with an understanding that you have come to. You've recently gone through a challenge. Your wisdom has deepened. There's a lot of potential available because of that deepening of wisdom. And if you're to act from your heart, then likely it's going to feel like you need to act right now. But because of the energy of Mars, it's like you're being drawn into what you've recently been through. It's like part of you is still there. And because that part of you is still in that particular challenge or difficulty that you dealt with, well, you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So one part of you knows what you need to do. One part of you has been through the challenge, has been transformed or purified by the fires and is ready to act. But the other part of you, well, it's feeling overwhelmed by the particular situation that you're dealing with. And so that's making it more difficult to do so. We're going to move forward now to the 1st of September and look at some of the other aspects that are going on with the week. Just bear with me while I astrologically change the day on our astrology software and bring back up the magnifying glass. And what we've got going on the 1st of September is an opposition between the Sun and Neptune. Okay, now the Sun is in Purva Palguni. On every journey, there comes a time where we have to rest and we have to regather and we have to look at our resources, pardon me, and understand what our resources are for the next step of the journey, and we have to develop a plan forward. Such is the energy of Purva Palguni. Whenever explaining Purva Palguni and its partner Uttara Palguni, which both of those are really just one section of the sky, I like to call it the sacred contract. It's about how can you best work in harmony with yourself to do what you need to do, rather than coming up against yourself and being your own worst enemy. Now, with this particular energy, you're filled with desire because Purva Palguni is a Kama-driven nakshatra, which is about desire at its basis. So you're filled with desire for what it is that you know you need to do, but because of still feeling overwhelmed, well, you're partly being dragged in to a set of unclear details about a situation, which are kind of nagging at you and partially keeping you from moving forward. It's like that old saying, the devil's in the details. Well, there are some illusionary details that you're dealing with, but they're making you feel uncertain. And because you're feeling uncertain, one part of you is feeling held back from taking the action, which would ultimately be more appropriate if you were to just be able to act from your heart, which again is somewhat difficult. However, on the same day, we've got an aspect between Mars and Venus. This is also going to impassion the situation, because whenever you have Mars and Venus coming into contact with each other, there's always a very high level of passion that's in the equation. And both of these planets are in Ashadha Nakshatra. Right? So you've gone in so deeply into knowing what you need to do that there's a very deep passion to act. You can overcome that, I like to use the phrase, those niggling details that are nagging at the back of your mind, if you allow yourself to do so. But they should not go completely unheeded. There's likely some information there that you need to pay closer attention to before taking further action. There is another very powerful aspect that's looming in the background this week, one that is between Jupiter and Uranus. And this is an aspect that a lot of other astrologers do not work with, and this aspect is called a sesquiquadrate. Sesquiquadrates can be very explosive alignments, especially when they are going on between two very slow-moving planets, such as Jupiter and Uranus. And we've got Jupiter as well in Purva Palguni. And the information that you need, the wisdom that you need, the guidance that you need in order to move forward with the set of circumstances is all right there. But we've also got Uranus in Revati. And Revati generally, let's just kind of sum it up rather than going into details about it. Revati can sometimes mark a period of being in limbo. And while you're in that state of limbo, there's a lot of developments that are going on, but they're not quite in place yet. So with this particular energy, it's like you can see the light, but the situation is not yet quite ripe for the taking. So you're feeling inside of yourself that you need to take your time. And on one level, you probably should take your time. But what is likely to happen with this particular energy, because Jupiter is so expansive and Uranus is so radical and intense, that something is likely going to be shaken and stirred, and an action is going to be taken. Not that it's a wrong action, but an action is going to be taken, and a lot of tension is going to be there, and there is likely to be some progress that results from this, but the particular circumstance that you're dealing with is not yet fully ready for the taking. So there's still some further development that needs to take. A small amount of progress on the heels of some tension, but still everything's not quite in place yet. If we then move forward another few days, one last major alignment for the week, and that happens on the 4th of September. So let's move forward to that date. And once again, bring up our magnifying glass. And what we have happening on that day is, just as we had an alignment between the Sun and Neptune, we're also going to have a tense alignment between Mercury and Neptune. Mercury is in Hasta Nakshatra. Hasta likes to take everything that's trying to gel together, bring it into hand, and kind of put it all together in a certain way and manifest something. But usually when that happens, there's some resistance that has to be faced, right? Whenever there is a force, there is also inertia. And in order for that force to come into form, it has to first face that inertia. Well, Neptune is providing that inertia by some very frustrating and annoying details that you're likely going to have to deal with in regards to a particular situation, or something that's not clear, but you recognize some work still needs to be done. It's almost like trying to work with not good enough lighting because everything is not clear and you can't see what your hands are doing. You know that particular circumstance. If you've ever tried to work in the dark, well, this is somewhat related to that. Right? So the options and opportunities are there, but it's like you're having to work in the dark in order to put something together that you'd much rather it came together in the clearer light of day. And it is likely that that is going to happen, but things need just a little bit more time for development before they can reach this state of being. Now, the particular aspects that I use are called Tajika aspects, the square, opposition. All of these aspects are also a part of Vedic astrology, and they're called the Tajika aspects. And when used when working with the planets and understanding the alignments between the planets in transit in tandem with the nakshatras, you come up with some pretty powerful information in terms of the spiritual journey that each of us individually is going through at this moment in time. And that's what I like to base my weekly forecast on, because that way it's going to be meaningful to everybody who's watching it, right? And if you could use a little bit of guidance with a annoying or hazy situation that you're dealing with, I should mention that I do offer several different types of astrological service. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of this video, you should see a link which will take you to my astrological services page, where you can book the service of your choice. That's going to do it for your Vedic lunar scope for today. And this is a Vedic lunar scope, and at the same time, it's also your full moon forecast for the 29th of August, 2015. The full moon of the 29th of August, 2015. The moon will be full in Pisces and the nakshatra of Shatabhisha at 7:35 p.m. London time. That's going to do it for your full moon forecast. Until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.